2,000 trees, and that's composed of over 68 distinct properties and 650 green space that has potential space for trees. Within the city of Springfield, we got this information from Blaine, a public school system employee. The land is comprised of floodplain and upland habitats.
Okay, so the current issue with urban forestry right now is the air quality and the soil stabilization. We also have no funding or set budget for the current urban forestry in the area. Wildlife plays a big role in the current issue. You're not taking the benefits you could right now. Politics plays a big role along with the citizens. The specific environmental issue is right now it's being really lightly managed and not very well. There's tons of liability because of the trees with high risk on them, meaning they could fall on people at any time, big storm. The air, soil, and water quality could be improved if you just did some minor changes and actually managed the trees. And right now, it has more of a negative look on school districts and whatnot, but you could increase it and it could be a lot better. Our interest groups are the school district, obviously, citizens, contractors, and anyone who's willing to buy the wood.
Okay, so these are some environmental problems that we have with the way things currently are. First of all, there's a major lack of biodiversity, both with the trees and the wildlife. This leaves us very susceptible to pests and disease. We use the 10-20-30 rule to determine if an urban forest has an appropriate level of biodiversity. It states that no more than 10% of the trees in the population can be of the same species, no more than 20% of the same genera, and no more than 30% of the same family. If you look over here, black walnut trees make up 22.5% of the population, and eastern redbud make up 12%. If a pest or disease were to strike, it would take out a huge brunt of the population. We would lose a ton of canopy cover, and it wouldn't be good. Also, with the current unmanaged forest, you get poor air and water quality, and you don't get filtered water running into sinkholes.
All right, so some of the economic problems with what we're doing right now, first of all, future maintenance costs. When the tree is smaller, or when your forest is less mature, it costs less to fix the problems to manage your forest than when the trees are larger. And if you're not monitoring for insects, pest, disease, you may think you're holding on to an asset, a landscape asset, but if all your wood rots because you didn't check for a disease, now it's worthless and you have to pay someone to take it out, you're holding on to a landscape debt. You have relatively lower property values as opposed to a better managed urban forest, which would increase property values, as we've been told all week. The city takes in money from property tax assessments. I'm assuming the same in Missouri as they do in Michigan, so they benefit quite a bit from that. And we need more stormwater storage, outflow storage, floodwater storage, whatever you want to call it, capacity, because the trees aren't able to hold on to as much water and filter as much of it before it goes into runoff or on impervious surfaces. Also, we have more liability than we should. If one of those trees should fall on somebody, damage property, the school would have to take the hit. As far as cultural, social, and political problems with what we're doing right now, first off, something just very, very general, loss of common heritage, connection with nature, when you're not thinking about the forest, when you're not engaging the public, when you're not managing it. A higher crime rate relative to if there were a healthier urban forest, a more stressed population relative to if there were a healthier urban forest, the same for slower recovery times. And a little transition to politics, we're from the state of Michigan, where we have rural counties that vote Democrat in presidential elections. It's kind of odd for me to be in a big city of 150,000 and walk around and everybody's pretty conservative. So I realize that if you're talking about raising taxes or taking on debt to accomplish something, there's a chance of political loss here. So you need some avenue to get around that and deal with the political reality here. Some of the sites are vulnerable to development as it is an urban area. One thing on the rubric I didn't think was particularly applicable was when I talked about private property and farming questions, is the land is held completely publicly, it's public school land, and I'm decently sure no one wants to farm public school land.
In order to properly maintain our urban forest, we must first approve a resolution for 2 new full-time workers in addition to some equipment. This includes a stump grinder, 2 chainsaws, and a dump truck for both the processing and transportation of our wood. Next, we must take an uneven age management approach so that, for example, if an older tree dies, we don't lose too much canopy coverage, and that younger one can take its place later when it grows up. Next, we need to increase forest biodiversity so that if a disease or insect comes through, it doesn't wipe out a large percent of the population. And thus we can always maintain good canopy coverage in that case as well. Fourth, we need to remove high-risk trees so that they have no chance of falling on people, like whether they're high risk for disease or rot or whatever reason. And finally, we need to leave 2 to 3 snags, which are dead trees that woodpeckers can eat insects from. In addition, small animals can den in.
Once we have our plan in place, we're going to communicate with various wildlife or environmental agencies and see the effect our plan has on the air and water quality in the area. And if it's not up to snuff, we can always change it after complying with them. Again, we're going to get our urban forest into compliance with the 10-20-30 rule. I can't stress enough how important that is, biodiversity, protection from pests and disease.
Right, and how we're funding this plan, we're going to finance it using kind of a revolutionary municipal bond program as opposed to the gold standard. I thought we could call them green standard bonds. And the idea behind it would be that the bonds would only be available for sale to citizens of Springfield because we want the citizens to be invested in it. They would be very cheap. They would be $500 a piece, and they would pay slightly higher than average municipal bond interest. They'd pay 1.5% interest, and they'd have a 30-year maturity date. I'm not sure what the average is in Missouri. Nationally, I think it's about 0.5% of municipal bond, although I do come from Detroit where we have junk bonds that will pay about 25% a year if you can hold on to them. We're also going to conduct new tree inventories and risk assessments every 5 years and check trees at least quarterly for pests and disease. As far as the economic benefits of our plan, first off, significant energy savings. According to Blaine, that employee of the public schools, my friend Joe mentioned earlier, currently the public school system saves, I believe, $14,000 or $15,000. $14,000 or $15,000 on energy costs due to the shading provided by trees. If we can increase that, 40–50%, that's quite significant. Also, according to Mr. Bright, who owns a small Civil War cave 10 miles south of here, black walnuts, which are way over the 10-20-30 rule, and we need to cut down about 25 of, are very valuable because they're the preferred wood for gun stocks and furniture here in the Ozark Mountains. The debt the city would be taking on to finance this would, one, be pretty low interest, and two, I mean, if the city citizens themselves are the bondholders, the interest the city's paying is being funneled right back into the city's economy. It's not going anywhere. So it's a win-win. And then there's a lack of a student exodus because the trees reflect positively on the school, and each student equals $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, and reduced stormwater control storage needs. As for political benefits, if every citizen owned a bond in the urban forest, they'd be pretty interested in the management of that urban forest. And I'd be willing to bet they'd want to vote people out who don't want to allocate the necessary resources to keep it managed and to keep it going and protect their investment. We'd basically be doing what Milton Friedman said 30 years ago. You can't change the political system by voting in the right people. You have to change it by making it profitable for the wrong people to do the right things. I'm not saying the wrong people are in office, but if they are, that should fix it.
So there are many environmental benefits to our solution as well. We would be enriching the air quality and the water quality by filtering it. We would also be stopping soil erosion, which is a big thing. We would also be increasing biodiversity by more of cutting down the majority and adding in new kinds. There's also a lot better wildlife habitat when you have more biodiversity, and that would be a great benefit. And we would be securing future canopy coverage staff.
There are also believed to be many social benefits to having a well-managed urban forest. Like, for example, you have more educational opportunities. If you have more smaller wildlife there, you can go out instead of buying material and teach them about it. You can go out and teach them about that. You can teach them about the types of trees and such. And then there are studies that are cited by Trees Works, like there are less crime rates and violence in areas with well-managed urban forests, because citizens, they feel more secure, they feel more safer, and they come out more, they're social, so there's more surveillance around the city. And they also say there's a more healthier community and such, because, well, they believe the patients, they recover faster when they look at trees and they feel less stressed and such.
Okay, this is our activity schedule. These are the specific things we're going to do to the forest to hopefully address the problems that we mentioned earlier. First of all, we're going to remove all of the dead, decaying, disease-ridden, or high-risk trees. A few of these, there's some pecans, pin oaks, white mulberries. We're going to cut down 25 black walnuts. We're going to do this slowly because they take up a huge amount of the population. We wouldn't want to lose them all at once. 2 per year for every 13 years, so we give time for new young trees to grow and replace the ones we're cutting down. We're also going to cut down 5 red buds. They're also a huge part of the population. We're going to sell the wood to the highest bidder and use the stump grinder we tried to requisition for earlier to make mulch to plant the new trees. We're going to be planting 10 eastern larches and 11 shortleaf pines. These are fast-growing trees. They can quickly replace the ones we're cutting down, as well as 10 pecans, red maples, and sugar maples. And these can be used for shade on buildings in the district to shave off energy costs.
We need some snag trees for our forest, and we found 2 very good candidates. These were the damaged eastern redbud and shingle oak. They were good candidates because they were far off the trail and had no chance of falling on people. Not only could they be used for wildlife habitat, for woodpeckers and small mammals, but they could also be used for education from students looking at the animals and observing them. For pruning young trees, we want to do this on a quarterly schedule and water them on a weekly schedule. And we need to monitor trees for diseases on a quarterly schedule so that it doesn't just surprise us and wipe out a large portion of the forest. Just like that.
All right, so our budget, yearly expenses, we're requesting 2 new employees. We'd like to pay them roughly $35,000 a year. Times 2 equals obviously $70,000. 2 new employee health plans, depending on if they have a family or not, I guess. About $5,000 times 2, about $10,000. 2 employee pensions, just based roughly on what a Michigan employee contribution is, about $4,000 for 2 employees. The dump truck, we are not requesting an actual purchased dump truck. We are requesting a skid truck and the wood chipper and stump grinder, but we believe a dump truck would be not wise to purchase because they run the hundreds of thousands of dollars, whereas a contractor that already has dump trucks and has 10, 20 clients could probably service our needs for something on the order of $10,000. 53,100 gallons of water per year, which is what we need for our newly planted trees. Assuming a rate of about a penny a gallon would be $530. The wood chipper and stump grinder would be a one-time expense of $20,000 and 51 new trees, give or take 25,000. So our first year expenses would be $139,000. Every year after that, we'd spend about $95,000, assuming that we buy all the new trees the first year. And then we're expecting to make about $25,000 off the sale of our walnuts, red buds, and other trees. And if we sold $2 million in bonds, after the first year, we'd have $1.86 million left over, and if you put that in an account yielding 5 to 6%, you would make $111,000 per year, which would be more than enough to cover this cost. You'd actually make a $17,000 yearly profit. You'd end up with $2.36 million after 30 years, and every citizen of Springfield who bought into the program would make about $300.
We trust the school board to finally adopt this management plan, which will improve our community's property and pay stupendous dividends, literally and figuratively.
Questions? Yeah, in terms of choice of trees, you mentioned positive psychological effects by having trees on campus or urban trees. What species should be cultivated on the lawns, perhaps planted on the lawns, that would help stress relief to students, even faculty
You probably want to go with the most aesthetically pleasing trees. You're going to want to plant native, obviously, at least they'll, they're adapted to the land. But if they look pretty, that'll reduce stress.
Specific species in mind?
One thing, maybe a shady deciduous tree,
Yeah.
because like, then again, you think, well, maybe if I can get out of here, I can go sit under that and just like, and then relax for a little bit. As if you have like a pine, you can't really go and lay under a pine.
Ouch.
Well, we're aware that we have some challenges in the district, in our urban forest, and trees are going to need to be replaced, new trees planted. What would go into the decision-making process to decide specifically which type of trees we should be planting?
Specifically, okay, I'll take the last one. Which ones are, one, native, two, can replace what you're cutting down rather quickly, three, when they get to be mature, maybe catch a disease, well, hopefully not, but, start to come to the end of their lifespan would be valuable if you need to harvest them and plant new trees behind them. Those kinds of things, and then, of course, psychological benefits to the community. How much water they can soak up, how much air they can filter per day, per week.
Thank you.
So what do you feel is the major strength of your plan? Why should we go with your plan versus some other plan?
Well, I think we have a sort of revolutionary idea with the bonds and whatnot. I think it involves the citizens and gives them like a sort of incentive to want to be part of that. And, if they're part of that, they're going to learn about it. They're going to want to know more about it. And it's actually going to be really beneficial. And they're going to sort of be like, they're going to want to see it, go further. They're going to want to see it stay on the right path. So, they'll continue to vote in the people who want to keep it like that.
Well,
How about, how about the maintenance of all these trees, getting this work done? You're going to be working on a campus, so there's differences there than, say, in somebody's backyard. What are those differences going to be? How do you deal with that?
Well, the campus will obviously be much larger. You'll need to transport the wood larger distances. For example, that's why we're having a dump truck, so that we can transport or cut down like black walnuts and redbuds.
And you can't just cancel school because you have to do tree maintenance. You can't have noisy equipment out there during any hour of the day. You'll have to schedule it around the school schedule, at least I think, unless you're way out in the section of the woodlot, way away from the school.
Oh, and in addition, we can't allow any trees to be planted in the athletic fields. Those are obviously.
How you get good spacing?
So, you've shared with us a lot of great information relative to our situation. What do you think is the biggest challenge that we as a school district are facing relative to our urban forest?
I'd say when 22.5% of your trees are walnuts,
That is a really big deal. If you did get pest or disease, do you really want kids walking by your school seeing a bunch of tree husks?
It wouldn't reflect well in the
Yeah.
education.
that, and they're 22.5% of the trees, but we looked through that tree inventory you all ran, and we didn't see one young walnut. They're all huge mature trees. They may be 22.5% of the trees, but they're at least 30-40% of your canopy cover.
One thing still in the back of my mind, and I do understand, you made a good point of people buying into this and raising the money for it. The interest rate's fairly catchy point to your presentation, but getting the people involved in it, I'm still a little fuzzy on that. How are we going to really promote this program to get them to buy into it?
It's an investment. It's like a stock when I go and buy ExxonMobil. And as soon as I buy into ExxonMobil, I care about how they're running ExxonMobil. I care if they fire their CEO. I care about the whole organization. I care where they drill for oil. I care where they're putting their money for tax liability. It's the same thing with this, except that the assets they're managing are no longer oil rigs and financial accounts, they're managing trees. So you're